Welcome to Galactic Initiative. I'm your host, Jeff. In this video, Grand Admiral Sean and I will discuss The Last Jedi for its 5th anniversary. I created Galactic Initiative after the rise of Skywalker. We addressed that dumpster fire with a 2-part review. So, long story longer, Galactic Initiative didn't exist in 2017 when The Last Jedi premiered. We never achieved catharsis by reviewing it. Today, our long-awaited therapy session. Happy New Year, Sean.
Happy New Year to you, my friend.
How were your holidays?
They were good. Lots of feasting, lots of family, time off from work, all the good stuff.
With this show on the horizon, the calm before the storm.
That's right. That's true. And nothing like kicking off the new year with a good dose of real anger and bitterness. Yeah.
So we talked about our best plan of attack for The Last Jedi and decided we would just begin at the beginning.
Well, we'll approach the whole show like Rian Johnson approached the Star Wars universe with no plan whatsoever. Yeah.
We start The Last Jedi immediately after The Force Awakens. And that makes the first line of the crawl extra confusing. Episode 8, The Last Jedi, the First Order reigns.
They blew up the New Republic. We had the trick shot 5 laser Starkiller base thing. So I guess technically they won on that level. I mean, they blew up a bunch of politicians. That was, I guess, the seat of the New Republic. I mean, if this is like Rogue One and Episode 4, these two movies touch, it's kind of hard to conceptualize their reign. They kind of just burst onto the scene a little bit in the first movie, and now they are in charge of the galaxy, apparently. Good on you, Hux. If the primary tool for the subjugation of the galaxy under the reign of the First Order is Starkiller Base, fear will keep the local systems in line and this battle station, et cetera, et cetera. If the primary tool for enforcement has been blown up, and now all you have is a fleet, you would think that while it would be a struggle, victory over the First Order is not out of the question. Hope has not been completely eradicated at this point. But like you say, there's never any real explanation or dialogue regarding it. I think probably the most accurate description of what's going on in the universe comes from DJ in this film, where he's basically like, sometimes they blow you up and sometimes you blow them up, man. Hey. It's all just a bunch of nihilistic garbage. And Rian Johnson's known for that. So congratulations.
One of the shortcomings of The Force Awakens is not understanding the threat or scope of the First Order. Where did they come from? We were never treated to a Death Star conference room scene in any of these films. Give me 3 minutes of dialogue that serves to inform the audience, and I would have been thrilled.
We've destroyed the Empire. We have a new Republic elected. They've decided that peace, we're going to give peace a chance, so we're not going to do the Empire thing. They don't go out and wage wars. They don't go out and enforce anything. They're not a force projection, right? They're just a symbol, and they come across the First Order, and they're like, oh, crappity crap. But even then, you can make them bigger or better than the small ceremonial force or the small, micro army that the New Republic has. But the visuals and the way that it's presented in these films it's just the Empire, right? And the Empire's back without it being the Empire. And none of it makes any sense. It doesn't fit any sort of logical structure that, they would have all of these massive ships, lots of jackboots and funny hats, and be an insurgency. Right, because that's what the First Order is. It's an insurgency against the Republic. So we've got 2 terror groups, I guess. You got the Resistance and the First Order fighting each other. The New Republic's like, we don't like war, but they're signing checks to Princess Leia. But, there's a lot of talk about that sequence with the bombers and all that stuff. And apparently Rian Johnson was channeling his inner Lucas, and he was watching a lot of footage of World War II stuff. I don't know, maybe he watched Das Boot too many times, and he's just like, yeah, we're gonna do a thing. And then now,
well, lots of black satin, which is very confusing.
Yes, there's some shiny. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, Hux played for laughs almost immediately, and things will not get better for this character throughout the film. This is the end. If there was a beginning in The Force Awakens, this character cannot at all be taken seriously from the get-go. I mean, he's played as a cartoon villain. He's just so clueless.
Well, yeah, because we set him up as in the Force Awakens as this up and coming, brilliant young general, politically minded. He's ambitious and he's a sort of a rival to Kylo Ren. He's never really shown as being incompetent. He's another one of these Imperial officers that is probably not as successful as he could be because he's too worried about status and title and power and currying favor with the leader. But he's never played as an idiot, like a complete fool. And then in this movie, it starts off that way, and then it devolves into like this almost domestic violence situation between him and Kylo Ren. It's like Kylo beats the crap out of him on multiple occasions in order to, I guess, I don't know, achieve authority or power over him, or show everybody that he's the boss, the new supreme leader. And then even, the beginning of the movie, the old supreme leader force chokes him out and drags him around on the bridge of the ship. And so, yeah, he goes from, and there's one moment in this film where we get back to the competency of Hux, where I think it's just Kylo coming in, but when they're on the big Star Destroyer and they're talking to Snoke, he's wrapping up a meeting with Hux while Kylo's coming in.
Oh yeah,
and
yeah,
he's like praising him.
Yep.
He's like, that's great work. You're doing good work and all stuff. And so he's redeemed partially there for a moment, but that is the only moment in the film where we get the sense that he is what he was from the previous film.
Snoke asks Kylo about the value of a rabid cur. And this is not the dynamic we saw in The Force Awakens, as you pointed out. That's not at all when both Hux and Kylo Ren are addressing Snoke. There's respect for Hux. And Hux is actually right in The Force Awakens.
Right.
The droid should have been the focus, and getting the map should have been the primary objective, and so on and so forth. But there's none of that for Hux here.
Okay, so that comment, the rabid cur comment, I suppose it could have been one of two things. It could have been bad writing, or it could have been another way of torturing Kylo, right? So because the whole thing where he tells Kylo, take off the stupid mask, you're a child in a mask, like all this stuff. I thought you were this great thing. I thought you had all this great power, but now you're just stupid. Was he saying a rabid cur about Hux, or was he saying a rabid cur about Kylo? If it could have been that. He could have been saying one thing meaning something else, but I don't believe that. I don't think Rian Johnson has the ability to think like that, especially write dialogue like that. So it's probably just, again, more of the let's just trash Hux. Let's just trash everything in this movie, right? I mean, to be honest, everything in this movie except for Rey and maybe Princess Leia, everything is trashed in this movie. Every single character who came before, every single idea, it's all been just trashed. JJ set something up, and then Ryan came along. He's like, "Burn it all down. I'm gonna subvert your expectations," not all that crap. Yeah, it's just the whole movie is confusing, and it starts with the Hux situation and the jokes and the treating of his character, and then it just goes into Poe Dameron. He's the hero, right? And he's the guy, and but he has to be put in his place now because he was too heroed, and his heroing was too much heroism. Sit
Toxic
in the corner,
masculinity.
Yeah, toxic masculinity. Sit down, flyboy. Put it back in your pants, kind of thing. You're like, oh, come on, really? Well, and I mean that's the way that Haldo talks to him, and all that is very confusing too. And we'll get to that, but his confidence is broken by Leia and Haldo. Then he's built up again at the end. Like, you're going to be the leader. Don't look at me. Follow him. Okay, so 10 minutes ago, you were just telling this guy that he was not fit for command, that he had no skills beyond exploding things and flying fast. He's like all the other flyboy jocks around here. We don't need those types, you know. And then suddenly it's like, you're the leader of the resistance, Poe. What? So you brought me down here on this planet where there's no hope of escape or anything, and then you hand over the keys to me? That way, you're setting me up for failure? Like, what's going on, man? They have miniaturized Death Star tech out there. We got an old lady who can't walk. He's the Bob Chapek of the Resistance.
You're not wrong.
Weirdness, right? Finn his character arc flattens, and he just becomes this prop that runs around shouting Rey's name all the time.
Well, okay, so Poe shows up, a few jokes, rocket-powered X-Wing destroys every surface cannon on a ship that is 1 mile in length, and this, from Captain Kennedy, is explained as a failing on Hux's part. So once again, the incompetent Hux. Perhaps if you created fighters with hyperdrives, but the TIE fighters arrive too late to stop Poe. They arrive in plenty of time to stop the resistance bombers. And here again, Rian Johnson, watching a lot of World War II films in preparation, he wanted the sub scene, and apparently he wanted the desperate bomber scene. There's been a lot of talk about these bombers and bombs falling in space or not falling in space and how that would work. But they're made of paper mache. I'm not sure exactly what this scene contributes to the film. A competent battle around the dreadnought would have accomplished the same task. I don't know. We've destroyed Hux as a credible villain, and now in some sense we're destroying the credibility of the Resistance. What happened in the space of a day?
Where's the rest of their squadrons?
Yeah, why would you maintain these ships? They're not worth the fuel you would put in them.
Yeah, again, some exposition might have been nice, right? Instead of Princess Leia, instead of having her spitting her lines through clenched teeth, something about the battle or whatever, maybe we go back a little bit and we have a prep meeting. Maybe we don't start this movie immediately after the last one. And maybe we have a scene where they're talking about, evacuating the planet. I don't know. Maybe the X-Wings have gone on to scout the next location for the Resistance or something. They know, or they find out that the First Order is coming, so they're trying to throw up what they have, and they're like, well, these bombers weren't built for this. Like, just tell me that, right? Say something along the lines of, it's like, because when they arrive at Crate, they're like, well, I got these old skimmers things that are crap and they're falling apart. And you're like, okay, so tell me about the bombers, right? Say, well, these were actually designed for atmospheric bombing, right? They're not designed for space bombing, and like all that stuff. Well, now you've set that expectation for me, so I can see why they're garbage picked over surplus weapons. We're down to some duct tape, a few sharp sticks, some bad atmospheric bombers, and Elo Asti and a couple of A-Wings. Okay, that's great. Give me that thing that helps raise the stakes. It helps set the tone for what comes next. And then you don't have all these questions like, why are they using the paper mache bombers? Anyway, but it helps move some of the questions off the table. So now you're not suspending your disbelief strenuously throughout this entire film. But I don't know, like I guess the whole point of that was to set up the Poe as a reckless leader, and that in sight of the objective of destroying a dreadnought, he's willing to sacrifice all these people, and and he has to be taught the lesson of leadership, that sometimes it's okay to retreat, do a strategic withdrawal, and save your resources and your people for another fight. And then of course it sets up Paige and Rose, and the emotion around the smelt necklace thing. I don't know it. Yeah, it's difficult. I don't understand a lot of it. It feels like we are limping along on this film at this point, right? Like, it started off, it could have been really good, and then we get the Hux joke, and then we start getting questionable tech and bad choices. And this is the problem with a lot of the stuff in The Last Jedi, and and basically modern Disney Star Wars, except for a few things. You get this really beautiful visual shot of the bombs exiting the bomber, but they serve no purpose, or they create more questions than they answer. And that's the Last Jedi in a nutshell. To me, is a bunch of really beautiful visual shots strung together to create mass confusion. Once you actually start listening to the characters talk and you start trying to figure out what the plot is based on all that, it's just maddening. Again, so now we're doing, and then there's the hyperspace tracking, right? So then there's this conversation, because then the First Order shows up again. And they didn't run out of gas, and they jumped twice in this movie. But apparently Hux knows how to plan for a road trip. He got a full tank of gas, a super big gulp.
Slim Jims, combos.
Yeah,
yep.
Right, totally. Mm-hmm. He's got chips, he's got jerky, right? He's ready to go, right? Apparently Princess Leia forgot to pack the gas when they were leaving the planet. Yeah, and then we get this hyperspace tracking thing, which creates this whole subplot in the film that is worthless, doesn't do anything. And that's, at that point, the whole thing just flies off the rails and becomes absurdity. And we haven't even got to Luke yet.
Yeah, Hux being thrown around the deck by Snoke in front of subordinates, but declaring we have them tied on the end of a string, and thus begins our terrible foundation of the film. One fleet can't catch another fleet despite being able to go to light speed. At the time, I heard many arguments. I've heard many arguments since why or why not this makes sense. Let's just put an end to this right here and now. If one fleet can access hyperspace, can go to light speed, there is no way for the other fleet to escape it.
It's all stupid. They could have moved around, in an encircling maneuver with the fleet to ultimately cut them off and destroy them. It's become a trope and kind of an inside joke for Bond fans and for fans of superhero movies and stuff. And the supervillain always wants to tell you about his overly dramatic, extremely complex and complicated way of killing you. I'm going to strap you to this table with this slow-moving laser, or I'm going to throw you in this pool full of sharks, and like all these things. And then they always just assume it works, and they walk off, and then of course our hero escapes or whatever. And it's the same thing. We're going to follow these guys at a matching speed where we're just close enough that we can touch them with our lasers, but also, because we're far enough away, we can't protect the small ships, which doesn't make any sense.
Well, and you never could with capital warships weaponry with turbo lasers. You can protect. You would vaporize your own ships. That doesn't make sense either.
Yeah, so why not send out a couple of wings? I mean, because here's the other problem with this whole deal is Kylo and 2 other TIE fighters, so 3 fighters, go out there and they destroy the bridge on the main cruiser, and they destroy the hangar and all the fighters in the hangar. Yeah, and that scene pisses me off to no end because he flies through the shields of an opposing ship. Which let's go to episode 3, the opening scene. Have you noticed the shields are still up? Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. All right. Sorry. And so then we do that, but then he flies into that tube, that launch tube or whatever, blows up all the ships in the hangar, and then we do a cutscene. It was like, well, where did he go? Because he was flying at like high speed into a hangar, and in the back of the hangar was the door where the fire came in and knocks over Poe Dameron and separates BB-8 from his head. Mm-hmm. So where did Kylo go at that point? Like,
turned around.
Yeah, he must have done the patented Poe Dameron drifter move, the Maverick, and I'm going to hit the brakes and they're going to fly right on by kind of thing. And you just do that, right? You just you slam your 2 control panel things or your control knobs, and then you go sideways. But yeah, that whole scene. But yeah, flying through the shields, shooting through the shields. Whatever they blew up the bridge with went through the shields.
It did. Right through the shield.
And so they were able to accomplish that with 3 TIE fighters. Imagine if they had sent like 30. They could have had that thing wrapped up in time for lunch. No more resistance. Pinky's out. Hux gets a promotion. Right, we're good. But no, it's the Bond villain problem. You know, we have to take the most convoluted solution to dealing with our enemy. Right? Well, it's going to take 3 days for the fleet to run out of gas. Oh well, we've got time now. We can go get the slicer off of Canto Bight. We can do all. You know, it's like just blow them up, man. If you can fly into their ships and shoot them up from the inside, then go do it.
Well, yeah, Rian Johnson, the premise, none of this works in the Star Wars galaxy. You have thousands of TIEs available. And when has the Empire of the First Order ever been reluctant to lose TIE fighters?
The implied ability is there, but there's never really a conversation about, hey, you know, maybe we should try something else, or maybe there's a better way to do this. He just says, oh, we're just going to hang back and I'm going to savor my victory and blah, 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 you know, and it's like, oh, here we go. You know. And there's also, here's the other thing. It's also implied at the beginning when Poe is talking about dreadnoughts, he's talking about how there's multiple dreadnoughts in the First Order fleet and that to take one out is a big deal. So there's another fleet, or possibly more fleets, available to the First Order. And if this is the end of the loathsome Republic and the silly Resistance, don't you think that committing your resources to this battle would be the most important thing you could do?
Great point.
So why not bring in another fleet to cut them off? And now you got them surrounded. Now it's on. But this one sounds just like Star Trek. The only ship in the quadrant, right? That was always the excuse. Why does the Enterprise have to do it? Well, we're the only ship in the quadrant. You're like, you're telling me that the United Federation of Planets, which has a massive fleet, and in 1/4 of the galaxy, there's only one starship, and it's you, and it's always you. Are you guys in the wrong quadrant?
But then later, the Resistance flagship launches small shuttles with cloaking devices. So the Resistance fleet has cloaking technology, but only on their
for the small
transports.
ships.
No ship that small has a cloaking device.
What do you mean? Why are you quoting other films?
Well, and the explanation, ultimately, we ran a decloaking scan. So the cloaking technology only works
when you're not looking for it.
Well, let's run a scan. Oh, you know what? Let's run a decloaking scan. So someone's trying to escape from you. The premise of the film is we're going to spend 3 days following you until you run out of gas. But did anyone run a decloaking scan? Bob, did you run a decloaking? Let's run a decloaking scan.
If you have the ability to detect cloaked vessels, you'd be running that all throughout the battle.
That would be our scan. If I say scan, Bob, assume that I want a decloaking scan.
You know, give me the full panel, right? I'll take the full panel. Right? I want regular scans. I want decloaking scans. I want
exactly.
But until DJ suggests it at the end, and he gives them a little, and then they're like, yeah, okay. And then, and they do it, and then they're like, look what we found. Well, the thief told the truth. Who would have thought?
So, Finn awakens, comedy.
From his nap.
We're leaking Bacta and stumbling around. We're
shouting
looking for Rey. The last time we saw this man, he suffered a life-threatening injury. And now he's turned into a joke, which is true of most males in the film. Talk to me about this this reintroduction of Finn.
It's incredibly disrespectful to the character and to John Boyega. He'd been sliced pretty bad, by a lightsaber, and so they threw him down in some Bacta, and we are in the middle of a battle, right? And so there's not a lot of people hanging around in the ER there where he's plugged in, but you would think he would be a little more sedated, right? He wouldn't just sit up and bang his head on the globe thing that's around him and then fall out of bed and tear all of his hoses and all that stuff. If this movie takes place 20 minutes after the first movie, and we're really only into the battle maybe an hour or so in screen or in universe time, he's not fully healed.
Great point. Another great
Right.
point.
Unless that's some miracle back to stuff. I mean, Luke got punched in the face by a wampa and had hypothermia, and he was in the back to tank for a couple of days. I would think that it would be more than a few hours for Finn to make a full recovery. But then, like you say, the character Finn in the first movie has an arc. It's not satisfying, but it's an arc. He starts off as a member of the First Order. He is ordered to execute unarmed civilian prisoners. He loses a comrade in combat against Poe Dameron, and he decides in that moment that he must no longer be a part of the First Order. Okay, so he has made a heroic decision. Yes, it's some very lucky plot things that get him out of the First Order, but despite that, he's growing as a character. And then he's trying to run away. And the running away thing initially is understandable. He doesn't have any people. He doesn't have anywhere to go. One could say he's solo, right? He's now a traitor and a deserter, and he knows that if he's found, he's going to be killed, and so he wants to get away. And that makes for some funny lines, like, "Why is everybody trying to go back to Jakku? Like, I got to get out of here," right? Like stuff like that. And it works, and we see his character. Then, of course, he gets introduced to Rey, and he gets a little smitten, right? So he's trying to play it up for her. But even at that point, in the back of his mind, he's still like, "I got to go." And it's only when Rey gets abducted that he signs on with the Resistance because he wants to go save Rey. He doesn't really sign on the Resistance out of any calling or any sense of justice or any of that stuff. He's doing it to try and save this girl because he's kind of got the feels for her. But his character starts to plateau there at the end of that movie. And he does the right thing, and he gets chopped. And so we're like, okay, well, Finn's moving in this direction, and so he should be fully committed to the Resistance, right? He's on board. He's buddies with Poe, the Rey influence, all that stuff. But he gets out of the back to tanker or the back to suit in the beginning of this movie, and he tries to jump ship. He wants to abandon all of his friends in the time of need. He wants to abandon the Resistance in order to save Rey. But all he says is, well, if Rey comes back here, she'll be captured. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this transponder thing that she's following and take it away from here so she won't get caught. And then we can live happily ever after, right? His entire existence, everything he does, every single action he takes in this film is simply to get Rey or to find Rey or to be with Rey. He doesn't give a rip about the galaxy. Like when he's on Canto Bight, he's like, oh, whatever, slavery, gambling, whatever. And DJ's trying to give him the big speech about the nihilism of the universe and how there are no sides, there's only war and profit and all this stuff. And even then, he's kind of like, yeah, I guess, whatever. But has anybody seen Rey? It's like, what? And they even forced this love triangle thing with Rose on him. And in the movie, he's just like, okay, that's really cute. But have you seen Rey? It's like, oh, okay, all right. But no, but his character is a coward in this movie. Instead of saying, okay, he's moving out of that, moving beyond that, and he's now fully committed to the Resistance and that kind of stuff. Rian Johnson says, no, he's kind of a coward, and we're just going to make him a coward, and he's going to be absolutely nothing. He accomplishes nothing. He does a lot, but he accomplishes nothing. Yeah, he runs around. Nothing. No, he doesn't accomplish anything. The whole mission to Canto Bight is a failure. They bring back the wrong slicer, but the slicer guy gets them into the ship, but they don't disconnect the tracker. They barely escape. The only reason why they escaped is because of the Haldo maneuver, right? Oh, and it was Rose and BB-8 who got the walker thing working to take them over to the shuttle, right? He gets on Crate. He's going to make the ultimate sacrifice and be a hero for the Resistance and blow up the mini Death Star gun. And Rose knocks his ship out of the sky, so he can't even accomplish that. He can't even have a hero's death. And then the rest of the time, it's just running around in the base and then following the Crystal Foxes. And that's it. And then it's big hugs for Rey at the end. Oh, it's so good to see you, Rey. Oh, my God. And that's his character in the entire movie. I think it would have been better to just say he died for his character. I mean, honestly, like
looking back, I think John Boyega would have signed off on that outcome.
Oh yeah, in retrospect, he probably would have been like, "Do it."
Right.
Yeah, but I mean, if they're gonna do Akbar like that,
sad. Yeah.
Yeah, it was very sad.
Yeah, and so then not only do we plateau, we backtrack in trying to leave the Resistance flagship and take the beacon away from the Resistance fleet. It's a level of selfishness. It's, hey, I only care about this one other person. I'm blind to the struggle that's happening all around me. And that's strange because he's on the bridge. He's conversing with Leia and Poe, with the leadership of the Resistance, and then he's wanting to take an escape pod and disappear. It's all about Rey. All about Rey.
And she's the one who's like, even though she's constantly wanting to go back to Jakku, right? She understands that in the interim, there's something going on here that needs to be addressed. And while her ultimate goal is to return to Jakku, she's willing to take time out from that in order to help the Resistance, which shows a bit of selflessness. Nobody says to Finn, like, bro, you're going to fight them anyway. Why not fight them with us where you have a chance, where there's strength in numbers, instead of trying to hide under a rock in the Outer Rim somewhere? Make a fight of it,
Right.
But nobody says
the Luthen Rail speech.
Yeah. What
Right.
I've sacrificed, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you rather give it all?
For something to mean something? Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, yeah. And so, but nobody gave him that speech. And so he's like, but again, it's all about the Rey situation. But, I would have hoped that at the end of that, he's moving away from the selfish, he's moving away from the cowardice, and he's moving into, even if it is still caring about Rey, realizing that Rey is part of the Resistance, and so now he's committed to the Resistance. He's made all these friends, right? He has his hetero life partner, Poe Dameron, and yet he falls out of the back-to-bag, and he's right to the airlock. Where's Rey? Oh my God. He plateaus, backtracks, whatever, but he stays at that through this entire movie. Everything is about Rey, and then being a comedic element. Yeah, I mean, yeah.
He's often played for laughs. No lessons learned for Finn, unfortunately. It's a tough go for John Boyega and for Finn, and things won't get better in the next film.
Well, no,
and it's get better.
And it's funny you talk about the Canto Bight thing. So at the end of it, he's got his little sidekick who wants to put a fist through the town and all that stuff. And so at the end, when they ride off and they save the fathers, which they don't, I'm just going to tell you that right now, that herd is still on that island running around. And so eventually they're going to round them up and they will be racing again in the next couple of days. So they didn't really save anybody. They didn't breed the whales or whatever. This isn't Star Trek 4. So they have that moment where he's like, it was all worth it though. And she's like, yeah. And he's like, okay, great. We got to go get Rey. So
it was worth it to tear up that town, make them hurt.
Yeah. Like, okay, did you really make them hurt? You broke a few windows. You knocked over some drinks, crushed a few speeders. These people have insurance. Okay.
It's all insured. Exactly.
Yeah. They'll just go sell a few more X-Wings to the Resistance and pay it off. Oh. So, well, apparently they don't have credit to buy these things because the First Order has all of the toys and we're looking for gas apparently. So, yeah.
I'm sure we'll have more to say about Finn along our journey.
Oh yeah.
In chronological order, we're ready to Acto, but let's do another scene. Let's do one more scene, couple more scenes actually, with the Resistance fleet and the First Order fleet. So you mentioned the scene, we've already touched on it, where Hux is wrapping up a meeting with Snoke. Kylo comes in, Snoke insults him, uses Force lightning, chastises him for failing to defeat Rey, failing to locate Luke Skywalker. Kylo has a temper tantrum in the elevator, in the turbo lift, destroys his helmet. Snoke charges Hux with going and getting Kylo to complete his training. This is the end of The Force Awakens. If we're going to give Rian Johnson a lot of credit, we'd say Snoke is stirring up his emotions and the conflict in him so that when Snoke connects Kylo with Rey, his plan to draw Rey will work. But that seems like an awful lot of credit to give Rian Johnson.
Well, yeah, how is that training?
He's changed his mind off screen. in the day between the films. Now he'll use Kylo as a pawn, and this will be attractive to Rey. All the girls like bad boys. And
That's true.
Can we honestly think, okay, Rian Johnson, this was intentional. Rian Johnson did this to set up what would come next. Is that even possible?
No, I think he got lucky, because really all of this, the debasing of the characters is part of his "I'm going to subvert your expectations" philosophy, or the "I like to piss off half the audience" philosophy that he has. If you go back, you can look at the interviews that he's done way before he ever touched Star Wars. Those are the type of compelling movies that, you know, inspire him or whatever. I'm sorry if you saw that interview and you were an employee at Lucasfilm and you didn't bring that to somebody's attention, it's on you. And if you brought it to somebody's attention and they did nothing about it, it's on them. But I think that a lot of this, just the few things that work in this film are just kind of lucky, and I think possibly could be the result of editing, because I don't think that Rian Johnson is a very deep or nuanced writer when it comes to character, motivation, and dialogue. I think that he just did the whole thing about him shouting it. It just shows a very base understanding of what Star Wars is. I don't give him the credit that he's doing this as a way to produce an emotional state in Kylo that keeps him attractive to Rey as a Force user, right? The potential for the turn. I guess there's all this conversation between the two of them about, you're going to turn. No, you're going to turn. And I'll be there when you turn. And I've seen the vision. And it's like, well, guess what?
You guys, no, you hang up.
It turns out, yeah, she's right. He turned against his master, but he didn't turn to the light. And,
expectations subverted.
Yeah, right.
I'm going to ask a question here. Is there a male character who is not criticized and exposed as a fool in this film?
The Yoda is the only one that really comes to mind that is mostly free of that. But it's also, we got crazy, out of his head, eating your food stick, playing with your flashlight Yoda.
We did.
Personality-wise. Yeah.
Yep.
DJ is not necessarily shown to be a fool, but he is a male character that is portrayed as a bad person. I'd say that DJ and Yoda.
So I raised this point because there's definitely a theme in this film. Women are wise and informed and elevated, and men are emotional and dumb. Thank you, Rian Johnson.
I will say we have a phrase in our fan group that does not thank you, Rian Johnson, but it's close.
It has you on the end.
You know, again, there's so many things in this film that are extra and unnecessary and not believable. And then, you know, who doesn't share the plan? Holdo's sitting there and she's like, "Steady on, rebels." And everybody's like, "Aye, aye, Captain. I guess we're just steadying on then." Mm-hmm. And Poe's anger is understandable because she is not acting. She has no sense of urgency. She's not taking action. She's not being a leader. Mm-hmm. And then when he finds out that she's fueling up the little ships or whatever, and there's no discussion about why, he thinks she's trying to abandon ship and that she's some kind of traitor, right? But they do that to simply continue to show him in a negative light. And, you know, if this is the end of the resistance and there's only 400 people left on this one ship, and oh my God, and it's, you know, the sun is setting on freedom in the galaxy, and you're like, "Steady on, rebels."
What was the secret? They had only one play. And so what was the point of keeping Crate secret from officers like Poe?
So if we go back to the original trilogy, everyone in the Rebel Alliance had the rendezvous point, so that if they got separated or if there was problems, maybe you're being followed by the Imperials and you had to lose them first. You know, everybody knew where they had to be. It was not broadcast on a radio transmission across the galaxy. "Hey, everybody, meet me at the Circle K on the corner." It wasn't like that. But everybody knew where they had to be. And so why wouldn't you do the same thing with the leaders of the other ships? all of your scene, like all your officers, right? So maybe you don't tell every single person, but maybe the guy who's the squadron commander can tell his pilots. Maybe you scatter, but keeping it a secret from everybody means that we all have to huddle together and follow the leader. And who's on a string now? And if this was going to be the last stand, right? If this is going to be the fire, or the spark that lights the barbecue, that cooks the turkey, that, whatever, then you would want as many people getting there as possible. And it really, the only purpose of hiding the location and all that stuff from Poe is so that we can continue to degrade Poe as a character.
And the contrivance of Canto Bight and the mutiny. I guess the inclusive nature of the rebellion turn resistance is gone. As recently as The Force Awakens, we had a briefing room and rebel leaders were free to give input on the response to Starkiller Base. People were talking. If you don't share the only plan that you have with your leadership team, then you'll never know if someone had a better one. None of it fits, but the rebellion, the resistance, it's blind faith. I don't get it. Let's go back to the premise. So we have the space chase, just pure contrivance. But if the tracking is only happening from the lead destroyer and you have multiple ships and all of them have the capability to go to hyperspace, you could simply fly in different directions and send all the ships into lightspeed. And then you've saved, if we say there are 4 capital ships to begin, you've saved 3 of them.
Right.
The plot, the premise of the film is just Swiss cheese.
Yeah, it's the Helm's Deep scenario, a death trap. Eventually, the First Order is going to figure out you're on crate, and it's at the point where, was there any way out? And 3PO's like, no, odds of survival is 700 million to 1. Like all that stuff, and there's no way out. We're backed up against the wall. So it's like 30 people with 50-year-old technology. And this is the end. I mean, this is the rebellion. This is the resistance.
Broadcasting for help. Yeah,
begging for help.
Rian Johnson doesn't understand Star Wars.
Well, but somebody gave him a mint-in box AT-AT toy. Doesn't deserve it.
Probably not allowed to say on YouTube what he has earned, what he does deserve.
We know in our hearts what he deserves. Yeah,
indeed. But yeah, Haldo, worst character in Star Wars.
Yeah, quite possibly.
Question mark.
Is up there. Again, it's that real-time 2017 stuff getting shoved in your face. You're like, Godspeed, rebels.
There you go. Yeah. And then, of course, in the end, a woman who makes the ultimate sacrifice, the Haldo maneuver. She gives her life, saves what's left of the resistance temporarily.
At least for 20 more minutes.
Yeah. Thank you. Yes. I heard something recently. Someone suggested that the story group wrote this film.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard various things about that, but mostly what I've heard, it was Kathleen Kennedy who was approving his script stuff and making suggestions and revisions, and that nothing really happened in the story without her approval. And because he was so open to this and so like, yeah, sure, let's do that, this is her quid pro quo was giving him this trilogy and all of this effusive praise. I could also see Ryan being so contrarian and just cavalier with the subject matter that whatever he wrote was so bad that it fit in with Kathleen Kennedy's desire to diminish the old characters and to raise up these new strong female characters. If you ever want to really just get angry about this film beyond what the film actually is, if you have the DVD, Blu-ray set, whatever, for this movie, there is a documentary, and the documentary shows the process by which the movie was created, and Rian Johnson as writer, director, producer. There's a lot of meetings with people. There's a lot of people involved. But there's also a lot of really interesting scenes of him freaking out because he has no idea what's going on, and he has no capacity for a big budget Hollywood movie. And every time somebody says, "Oh yeah, we need you to sign off on this like $30 million set build," and he's like, "Oh my God, that's a lot of money. What do I do? What do I do?" He did not sound like someone who was excited to make this movie, that was capable of making this movie in all of these scenes. But the thing that really, really made me mad is at the beginning of this documentary, they show the rap party. And here's Ryan Johnson, drunk, Kathleen Kennedy, drunk. And he's like,
I don't want to freak anybody out here, but I think we just made a Star Wars movie.
no, that is not. That is no. Like, I've watched hundreds of these documentaries making of film things, and you see competent directors in charge. At the end of it, people are, emotional about the fact that the filming has come to an end. But the director gets out there and he's like, "Look, people, this has been fantastic. This has been the honor of my life. We're doing great work. We're great artists, and we're gonna live forever with this. This is great." And here's Ryan, out of his mind, drunk, going, "I think I made a Star Wars movie. Did I, Kathy?" Kind of a thing. And you're like, "What is wrong with you, dude?"
There are no answers, only more questions and more anger waiting for you there. But yeah, the director and the Jedi, you sent a copy to me.
Yes. I was like, you have to watch this trash.
You mailed a copy to me as a must watch. And I appreciated it greatly then. And it's still, you can't unsee it. It will find a place in your memory banks. It will not leave. It amplifies my dislike for the film.
It doesn't necessarily amplify my dislike for the film. It amplifies my dislike for Ryan Johnson. We look at some of the, and if we want to keep it in-house, we look at Rogue One and Solo, and we look at some of the problems that they had in those productions, and the removal of directors, and the rewriting and reshooting, and all the reshoots that happened for those films. I've said this on many other podcasts and our show and other shows. The fact that a film gets made is a miracle. If you look through the process of somebody comes up with an idea, they pitch it to a producer or to a movie house, or they pitch it to a producer who then pitches it to a movie house, whatever. The fact that there's a billion pitches being done every day. How many of them get to the studio to begin with? Then the studio's got to look at that and they're gonna be like, well, we don't like that, or that has potential. So you go through this thing, and then you get a writer, and then sometimes that writer turns in a script, and the studio's like, nope, get somebody else, right? Or they'll say, nope, rewrite it. If they're lucky, they'll get to rewrite their own script. If not, somebody else gets called in to doctor it, and then pretty soon you have like 5 writing credits on the movie, and then it has to get budgeted, and then you look at all the scenes and that, and you're like, okay, well, we only got 30 million, we needed 300, so the alien species on the planet with the thing, that's out of it. Okay, so we skip that, can't afford those costumes. So these things, all these different choices and decisions and filters that this stuff goes through, and then it comes down to whatever you got on film goes through the editing process, and so even more of it gets chipped away, and then you hope at the end of the day that 90-minute or 120-minute thing that you put out in the theaters makes the money back. Yeah, there's so many things that can go wrong and so many moving parts that derail. I mean, there's films that have gotten to the point of they're starting to do shooting and they get shut down. So the fact that this film got made really is kind of what makes me angry, right? But I don't know who's responsible for the crap that came out the end of the tube that wound up in the theaters, because if you look at all of the influences, and if you look at the person of Ryan Johnson, and if you look at the leadership at Lucasfilm and all the meddling, because if you look back at some of these productions, and even recent stuff like Kenobi, she's got her hand in a lot of stuff, and she doesn't take no for an answer. was Ryan Johnson just a malleable thing? Look, my ladies over in the writing room have come up with this great story about Rey and this purple-haired lady, okay? And you're going to direct it, and if you say peep, you're fired like the last 3 directors, and we're going to go find somebody else. He's like, yeah, whatever, lady, that's cool. And she's like, and if you just do it, I'll give you the writing credit. Okay, sure. Who knows? But watching that documentary, like, God, there's a lot of stuff with him where, why was he chosen? If he's this inexperienced and this detached from the material, why would you hire him in the first place for this massive budget production? Star Wars movie, hundreds of millions of dollars to make, cast of thousands, totally not prepared for it. We have fired so many people in Star Wars because they weren't getting it done, yet he's allowed to hang on. Why would you put that documentary out? Why would you allow the people to look behind the curtain and say, there was no plan, there was no leadership, and they chose the worst possible person to helm this project? And again, I don't know. I just, there's a whole lot going on behind this film. Yeah, there's plenty to hate in the film because the stuff that got pieced together and put on screen for us is trash. But think about the thousands of decisions that were made in the background by hundreds of people at Lucasfilm that resulted in those scenes that are trash, that are knit together to make a movie that's trash. and the fact that after the trash is out, you have the leader of the Lucasfilm, Kathleen Kennedy, wandering around talking about how this film is the best Star Wars movie ever made, and how Rian Johnson is the new George Lucas because he gets Star Wars and he makes beautiful Star Wars, and that he's going to get another trilogy because he's the future of Star Wars. Is that just spin doctoring PR? Because honestly, I think Kathleen Kennedy believed it. And it wasn't until people started threatening her that she kind of backed off that language, and then Ryan sort of faded into the background, and we never talked about his trilogy ever again.
Part 1 of The Last Jedi's 5th anniversary discussion has come to an end. So much criticism, not enough time. Thank you, Sean.
It's all a machine, partner. Live free, don't join.
Part 2 will follow. Thank you, viewer, for watching to the end. Maybe leave a comment with your thoughts on The Last Jedi 5 years on.
Galactic Initiative is not authorized or endorsed by Lucasfilm Limited. The name Star Wars and all related materials are registered trademarks of Lucasfilm Limited, a subsidiary of the Walt Disney Company, all rights reserved. Galactic Initiative is a registered trademark, and other product and company names are trademarks of their respective holders. Use does not imply affiliation or endorsement.